Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on the unceded territories, or where I am in Surrey, BC, of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Semiahmoo, the Katzie, the Coquitlam, Kwantlen, Kwigat, and Tsawwassen nations. My name is Jen Marchbank, and I am a professor in the Department of Gender, Sexuality and Women's Studies, and the host for today's book launch. So today's event is part of our 50th anniversary celebrations to mark the teaching of the very first class in Gender and Women's Studies here at Simon Fraser University in 1971 on geography and gender, which led, of course, to the development of our Women's Studies Department and our current name, Gender, Sexuality and Women's Studies. And we believe that we are the oldest such department in Canada. So this book launch is part of our celebrations as part of our GSWS Reads. And it gives us great pleasure to once again be working with the Quirkies. We have a long and overlapping history of working together, stretching back to 2012. And we were glad to be the sponsors of their 2014 publication, The Bridge Generation. In 2015, SFU gerontologist Dr. Gloria Gutman, along with our department's Dr. Claire Robson and myself, worked with the Quirkies and an LGBT youth group facilitated by myself and GSWS alumnus Sylvie Trefan called Youth for a Change. We worked together to develop Canada's first ever educational materials on LGBT elder abuse, a project that we are still sharing. We also worked together, as you may have seen on the slideshow, in writing and editing Basically Queer, which I think Cynthia is going to be able to show us. Thank you, Cynthia. We also have other links. We have had students perform at Quirky open mics. Quirkies and Youth for Change have created, directed and performed Call and Response, an intergenerational set of performance pieces. And of course, GSWS has been blessed by having several Quirky members as guest lecturers in Dr. Robson's Queer Geographies and other courses. So you can see that we are pretty much intertwined and mutually supportive. So, as we're still waiting for some people to come in, those who are currently with us, we're going to play a game. And so the prize is a $25 gift card to the People's Co-op so that you can order your very own copy of Together We Stand, if you haven't already got one, or you can buy one for a friend. So game one, get your fingers ready to type into the chat. Rima will be adjudicating. And what the first person who can tell us what the R stands for in Quirky will win the prize. Go for it, folks. Ha ha! A Youth for a Change member has got the correct answer. Don't know if it was the first one. Oh, congrats, Nix. That's wonderful. Nix knew that the R stands for writing without a W. So Nix, I will make sure that your information is passed on so that we can get the gift card to you. So we're now going to watch a video that the Quirkies put together that explains a little bit about who they are and what they do. And that's if the technology angels are watching over us. And we're just going to go for that right now. Hopefully, Aman hit it.
Okay, great.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
We are Quirky.
Quirky stands for Queer Imaging and Writing Collective for Elders.
Thank you for inviting us to this event. Quirky is the group of 22 LGBTQA2S plus elders. We've been meeting every week for the last 14 years.
We're old queer activists and artists who share our stories in writing, images, performances, and political action.
Even with COVID-19, we feel privileged to be able to continue to meet weekly. Besides being an artistic outlet Quirky is an important social support network. We look out for each other and we check in on each other.
We've learned over the years that we have to stand together and we have to speak out for our rights. We grew up in a time when we didn't have the same civil or political rights as everyone else. We fought to demand a rightful place in our society for women, people of color, and queers, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, two-spirit, asexual, and those who have yet to make up their minds.
Make no mistake, there's still work to be done. In many parts of the world, queer people have no rights and can be imprisoned or killed. Despite promises that government oppression will never happen again, governments change, and we've seen other countries backslide on LGBTQ rights.
And there are always new challenges. Elder queers' voices and experiences must be part of the discussions and decisions on these issues. We will continue to stand together. We won't give up.
And speaking of standing together, Quirky has a brand new anthology that we published this spring. It's called Together We Stand, Queer Elders Speak Out.
We tell stories from our experiences through memoir, comics, poems, and plays. Some are tender, some are difficult, some poignant, and many are funny.
You can get Together We Stand, Queer Elders Speak Out in print or as an ebook. Just order from your favorite bookstore or online or wherever you get ebooks. Search for Together We Stand, Queer Elders Speak Out, and watch for further launch events.
For more information on Quirky, contact Britannia Community Center. So long for now. We are
Quirky!
Together We Stand.
So we're now going to move on, and I'm going to invite the editors, Don Martin and Val Innes, to basically explain to us how this book came along and how, as the Quirkies, worked together to produce that. So I'm going to mute myself, and Val and Don, please take over.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Jen. It's a tremendous honor for the Queer Imaging and Writing Collective for Elders to have this opportunity to launch our latest anthology of queer writing. Together We Stand, Queer Elders Speak Out. Thanks also to Gender, Sexuality and Women's Studies and Simon Fraser University for hosting this event. I'm Val Innes, and I'm here with my co-editor, Don Martin. I've been with Quirky since the beginning in 2006, and Don joined in 2016. We both serve on the Quirky Coordinating Committee. Also joining us later on our panel are Pat Hogan and River Glenn, who also participate in Quirky's Coordinating Committee. Jen has given you some background in the history of Quirky and our many projects over the past 15 years. Together We Stand, Queer Elders Speak Out is our 8th book, as you now know, including a textbook, Basically Queer, which was a joint project with Youth for a Change, and for which Dr. Marchbank was co-editor with Dr. Claire Robson and Kelsey Blair.
Our latest book is the product of a 2-year writing and learning project that was funded by a community arts grant from the City of Vancouver through the auspices of Britannia Community Center. Until COVID, Quirky has been meeting every week for many years at Britannia, and we've been meeting weekly on Zoom since March 2020. The grant allowed us to produce a series of workshops that were open to the public and led by local artists. The genres of these workshops were memoir writing, graphic storytelling, and playwriting. 3 very talented women, local artists, led the workshops: Claire Robson, Sarah Levitt, and Dorothy Dittrich. They prompted us to tell stories from our lives in narrative, theater, and cartoons. So we gathered them all together with some other stories, and we published our latest anthology, Together We Stand, Queer Elders Speak Out.
The memoir section of our book contains pieces started in Claire Robson's workshop, focused on school experiences, as well as other stories and poems that our members wrote in 2018 and 2019. There's a script of a skit we performed for the annual Seniors Art and Health Showcase, where we presented the characters of an hour-long play we began writing but didn't complete until after the book was published. Dorothy Dittrich showed us how to workshop a script and make the dialogue more dynamic and authentic. Last fall, we finished our play and adapted it for an unedited Zoom performance. It's entitled Sorry, and deals with Prime Minister Trudeau's apology to the LGBTQ community before the House of Commons. If you're interested, we can send you a link to watch it. A third section of the book is about Sarah Levitt's workshop on comic storytelling. 5 quirkies contributed graphically illustrated stories and messages. There's also a travelogue section and a collection of stories about the experiences of our members in the ongoing fight for civil and human rights for LGBTQ2S+ people.
So we're moving on to the most important part of this event, when we're going to have 5 of the authors reading extracts of their pieces for us. But this will then be followed by a question and answer session, where we'll have additional panelists, Pat and River. So please, you can start putting your questions into chat. That can be about the text. It can be about how the group organizes. It can be really anything that you feel that you would like to learn a little bit more about. Rima will be moderating the chat and coming up with a list of questions. And if you feel that your question has been missed, just type it back in again. The question and answers will take place after the readings. So now I'm going to invite Dawn to introduce the first reader.
Well, a theme running throughout Together We Stand is an explanation of how we work as a writing and imaging collective, and the process we went through in each of the workshops that I described earlier. We wanted to show that it's possible for queer elders everywhere to speak out and tell their stories and to support each other and give voice to the rich and experiences that for too long have been suppressed and ignored. Today, we'd like to give you a taste of what's in the book. Joining us to read their poems and excerpts of their stories are Quirkies Marcia Ablowitz, Cynthia Cole, Farron Gillespie, Chris Morrissey, and Ellen Woodsworth. Our first reader is Farron Gillespie. He's been in Quirky, well, he's got 3 stories in Together We Stand, and he's been in Quirky for 10 years. And he'll be reading an excerpt of his piece, Awareness and Love, Shame, Blame, and Resentment.
Okay, so the story, my name is Farron, and it's really nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. The story I will read, as Dawn said, is Awareness, Love, Shame, Blame, and Resentment. Do you think that covers enough bases for most of us? Speaking in public is not easy for me, and I tend to get nervous. You know how what they say, engage the audience, smile, use emotion, eye contact, and on and on. And then I'm always afraid that I'll pretty much have forgotten the story. But anyway, there are so many ways I find to gain insight into ourselves on the road to self-improvement. I've tried a lot of them. The simplest for me has been dreams. And so here we go. Dreams have always provided powerful insights into my subconscious. After a tumultuous childhood, I have spent a lot of time to figure out the whys. My mother and I were constantly bickering. We were a cold family, no hugging or touching for us. After my 60th birthday, I thought, to hell with it. I am who I am, and if it's necessary for me to know the details, then my higher power can just make the answers more available to me. I was tired of puzzles. But as one of my mentors said one time, if you ask, be prepared to receive. Several nights later, I had an unusual dream. I had moved away, or maybe more precisely, ran away many years earlier. In my dream, I was back in my old bedroom in my family home, except it didn't quite look like my room. My sister was with me, and we were catching up on what had happened with each of us since I had been away. I knew she was my sister, but she didn't look like my sister. My grandmother came to the foot of the stairs to say Mom was calling us for dinner. My Protestant grandmother and my Catholic mother were seldom under the same roof. She didn't quite look like my grandmother either. While I was heading down the stairs, I saw my mother at the foot of the stairs, and yeah, you got it. She didn't quite look like Mom either. She was singing a cheerful song that sounded familiar, something about her wayward son returning home, and he knew how much she loved him and he loved her. I was so filled with joy that I started spontaneously laughing. And when I reached her, I put my arm around her, so we bounced off each other, heading to the dining room. I woke up in total bliss. As I'm often prone to do, I queried my higher self before I could adulterate it with thought. The answer was instant. That was your real family, seen through love without all the baggage. I was on a high for the rest of the day, but that was not the end. A few nights later, I had another dream, and I was having tea with my mom in a love-infused room filled with flowers and light. All of the heaviness between us was gone, and in its place, only what I could describe as love. It felt like we were there to resolve something, and the conversation went something like this. Mom, I have spent so many years being ashamed. At first, I thought it was because I was so skinny, or my head was so big. Then I thought it was because I was gay. But in this moment with you right now, I'm drawn back to a summer day when I was 12 and I was wearing some old shorts that I often wore. In a very firm, maybe even angry voice, you told me to go upstairs right away and change into long pants, that I was too old for shorts and I was being indecent. I'm realizing just now that I thought I must be indecent and my body was bad. As I shared with my mom, I could see and feel her pain. My dear son, you were not indecent and your body wasn't bad. You were my beautiful son. I wanted to keep you safe. I saw you as vulnerable. She paused. I know, I was that age. I was vulnerable and my mother didn't protect me. And that's the end. I hope it makes you all want to go out and hug your mom. Thank you.
Our next reader is Cynthia Cole, who's been a Quirky since 2015 and is also a member of the Quirky Coordinating Committee. Her poem, Who Knew, was part of a public reading entitled A Dialogue in 4 Parts that Quirkies performed for the 2019 Senior Arts and Health Showcase.
I'm so thrilled and honored to be part of this event. I was an undergraduate student at Simon Fraser 50 years ago for the first Geography of Gender course in 1971. And I became the teaching assistant for the first courses in the Women's Studies department, Women's Studies 100, 200, and 400 in 1976. And I audited Dr. Claire Robson's course, Queer Geography, in 2016. I love gender, sexuality, and women's studies, as you can see. This poem I'm going to read is a love poem. This one is for my partner. Who knew? Who knew a person like me, born wrong and cursed as too independent and strong-willed, would finally come to love? Not roller coaster love with thrills before the crash, but love that lasts, love that's home, love that just is. every day, ordinary and unbelievable. Who knew all that Sturm und Drang before you would teach me what love is not, and then lead me through my true self and the cosmos of my heart to reach you across the universe and at the water cooler now, 25 years and more. Who knew? Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Marcia Ablowitz has been a member of Quirky since the beginning, and Marcia's currently working on a terrific science fiction novel, but today she's reading a portion of her story out of Together We Stand about visiting Jerusalem, entitled The Resurrection.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. And of course, now I've lost my place in the story because I was looking at other people's stories. So I'm going to have to find it.
That's fine, Marcia. We have got plenty of time.
Oh, here it is. I'm finding it now. So this is a story about Mary Bell and I visiting Jerusalem. Thank you, everybody, for coming to our book launch. We find Linda's condo in Jerusalem, and my partner, Mary Bell, and I are very eager to explore the old city. Linda, who's lived most of her life in Jerusalem, warns us, the old city of Jerusalem is a dangerous place to go on your own. A terrorist stabbed a tourist recently. Yes, we'll be careful. Mary Bell and I walked through the old city stone gates. The Jerusalem paving stones are hot in the noon sun and worn smooth by thousands of years of passing feet. All day long, tourists and pilgrims follow the way of the cross towards the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Some carry large wooden crosses along the Via Dolorosa, and we follow behind a group of pilgrims as they go through an arched gateway. Do we have to pay to go into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre? There doesn't seem to be anybody selling tickets. The church stretches away in all directions. There's curving staircases to upper levels, shrines, crypts, stone sculptures, alcoves. My dear partner, Mary Bell, has again forgotten her glasses. So I'm reading out loud from the guidebook. Here is the Holy Greek Orthodox Shrine. It contains the place of the true cross and the slab where Jesus was laid out. When I lived in Jerusalem other times, I found many places of the true cross and many tombs. Then I notice there's a group of young women in traditional dress, long flowing brown tunics, gray-brown headscarves framing bright young faces, Christian Palestinian schoolgirls. One of the girls smiles and approaches me, and she has such clear green eyes, it's very hard for me not to stare. She speaks softly in perfect English. Excuse me, please. My name is Fatima. What is your native country? My name is Marcia, and this is my friend, Mary Bell. We're from Canada, from Vancouver. She translates to her school friends. They smile and nod. They've heard of Vancouver. One of them has an uncle who's visited Canada. And where are you from? I ask. We are university students from Jenin. We're visiting Jerusalem today. Jenin is in the occupied territories on the West Bank. Oh, yes, Janine, I say. Oh, you've heard of Janine? What have you heard? I choke. I can't very well say. The only thing I've heard is it's a hotbed of terrorism and that it's the center of Palestinian extremism. And every time a falafel seller, a soldier, or a school kid gets blown up, the guy on TV says, the terrorist came from Janine. So I say, I've heard Janine is a beautiful city with an excellent university. In fact, until this moment, it never even occurred to me there was a university in Janine. The girls smile and nod. Fatima says, yes, you're correct. Janine is so beautiful. And my friends, we would like you to visit Janine. We invite you to come and be guests in our home. I reply, thank you very much. It's very kind of you to invite us. I was scared to say anything else. We'd really like to come, but we only have a few days here before we go to Egypt. So I don't think we'll be able to visit your beautiful city. Fatima translates and the girls smile and nod. And Fatima says, please, we don't have a guidebook. Do you think we could follow you and listen as you read? I'm delighted. Yes, certainly. We all step carefully down the slippery steps into Mary's cave. I read from the guidebook about Jesus and Mary, and Fatima translates effortlessly. We go up some stairs, around a small shrine, and approach a cool marble slab. Here his body was washed. Here his body was wrapped in linen. And here is a Greek shrine where his mothers pray. Finally, we've seen enough, and we head back towards the entrance. The girls are smiling. I have one more question, Fatima says. Yes? At our college, we have an American professor. He teaches English literature, and he's an excellent teacher. He told us a story about this man, Jesus, and we would like your opinion on it. He said, Jesus died on the cross and was buried here in Jerusalem in a tomb. And then on the third day, he rose up from the dead. Have you heard of that man, Jesus? Have you heard that story? I nod, but I can't believe her question. How could they not have heard of Jesus? They live just up the road from where the crucifixion happened. Was I totally wrong in assuming that they are Christians? Well, she asks, do you think that story is true? I choke. They're all looking at me expectantly. I suddenly realize they are definitely not Christian schoolgirls. Is it even legal for me to explain Christianity to a Muslim? I fumble. Well, well, do you want to know what I said? Do you want to know if my Christian partner, Maribel, was any help here? Read the book. Thank you.
Chris Morrissey is the founding member of our group, even before it was called Quirky. And she's also a member of the Quirky Coordinating Committee. She's an Order of Canada recipient for her work in changing Canadian immigration law to recognize same-sex relationships and families. Chris will be reading an excerpt from her story about returning to Canada after almost 9 years in Chile. Her story is, it's customary. You're muted.
Hi, everybody. Apologize for that. This has been a very strange year for all of us, I'm sure. And one thing that we haven't been able to do is to travel. And so many people in the past have been, I'm sure, used to going down to Seattle for ball games or for concerts or whatever. But this year has been an exception to that. So this story goes back to a time when we were able to cross the border. And in fact, it goes back as far as 1989, January of 1989. And as Dawn said, Bridget and I were on our return back from Santiago. I also want to acknowledge that the story is about Bridget, and also that this Sunday is the 5th anniversary of her death. So this is also a piece in honor of her. "Don't hold the steering wheel so tightly," Bridget said to me as we approached the Peace Arch crossing, the border between US and Canada. "White knuckles are something the border officers notice." At least that was what we had heard. It was January 3rd, 1989. We were driving a 1988 blue Ford Escort rental. The trunk and back seat were loaded with bags and boxes. There was a full 6-piece set of Corningware that we had purchased in an outlet in Portland, Oregon. A box set of cookware, a set of cutlery for 6, a TV set, a PVR from Costco in Seattle, Washington. Bags full of linens were stuffed in between everything, wherever they would fit. We each had a bag of personal clothing. All of this stuff added to my anxiety. I was sure we would be stopped. However, first there was the hurdle of immigration, our primary source of anxiety. I felt reasonably safe. After all, I was a Canadian citizen, complete with a valid passport that I had renewed at the Canadian consulate in Santiago, Chile. Bridget, my companion and my partner, however, though she was a double passport holder, did not have a Canadian one. She had US and Irish passports. She could legally enter Canada only as a visitor, and that was all we could say. We knew that our intention was for her to stay forever. Would all the goods in the car cast doubt on her being a visitor? The officer in the booth asked for our passports. She then asked Bridget, "Why are you coming to Canada and how long do you intend to stay?" We had rehearsed this moment. "I'm coming to help my friend get settled, and I'm staying for about 2 to 3 weeks." This was not entirely true. In fact, it wasn't true at all. The rest is in the book. Please follow up by looking at the book and reading the rest of the story.
Thanks, Chris. It's a good story too. There's a couple other ones that Chris also has. So I encourage you to read it as well. Our last reader today is Ellen Woodsworth, the first openly lesbian city councilor in Canada, a longtime activist locally and globally for social justice, using an intersectional lens, including women and LGBTQ2IS rights. She'll be reading her poem entitled, "You Have Struck a Rock." Unmute.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today and listening to our amazing book, Together We Stand. I wrote this a couple of years ago, and it's entitled, "You Have Struck a Rock." And it's got pieces in it that refer to a poem by Akiko Yoshano, which was called Mountain Moving Days. And there was some lesbian feminists who did an album called Mountain Moving Days. So if you hear that, that's what that reference comes from. I came out in 1970, so it's been a long and ongoing fight. And right now we're fighting to put that intersectional lens on so that everyone in the queer community can feel safe and part of the changes that we need to make. So this is my poem. We will fight back. We're seniors and we have seen the likes of you before. We will fight back. We are the rock that is there beneath the surface. We're the mountain that is full of memories of resistance, hell, terror, fear, rage. We are a mountain full of joy, experience, camaraderie, and passion. You have struck a rock. The mountain has begun to move. We are shaking off our contentment, our patience, and our joy in the lives that we have built. You will see us rise up. There are millions of us. We have no fear. We have nothing left but to fight. You see, we are LGBTQI2SA seniors. Spell it out. We're lesbians who have emerged out of the women's liberation movement. We're gay men who have emerged out of the AIDS movement. We're the trans community creating new movements. We're queers who have come out of the Black, Latino, and Asian movements. We are the Two-Spirit who have been honored by Indigenous cultures around the world for thousands of years. We are queers who were silenced for lifetimes, beaten up, tortured, incarcerated, and murdered. We are everywhere. We are the ones who created the laws that you are tearing up. We are the ones whose lives are at stake. We know that life never goes in a straight line. We are angry. We remember the past. Our time is short. We are coming out of our homes to join the millions of others whose lives you think you can destroy. Together, we are rising up. You have struck a rock.
So thank you so much for those wonderful excerpts and poems from the book. Marsha and Chris just gave us those cliffhangers. So we now all have to make sure that we catch up and find out the endings. So well done, everyone. And thank you to Val and Dawn for introducing our speakers. Dawn, do you wish to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that that our book is published by lulu.com. It's available in print and ebook. And you might have heard this in the little video clip that we showed earlier, but you can order it from your favorite bookstore or directly from the publisher or through any online vendor because it's a global distribution. And it's available in Kindle, Kobo, Nook, and Apple Books. As you probably are seeing in the chats, there's a few copies that are available at the People's Co-op bookstore on Commercial Drive. So be sure and get a copy.
Thank you. Val, I saw your hand up. Do you wish to say something?
Just if you're going to order from the publisher, go to lulu.com and select your bookstore, then start your search. Type in the full title, Together We Stand, Queer Elders Speak Out, because there are a number of books called Together We Stand. So you need the Queer Elders Speak Out and add it to your cart. Prices vary depending on the seller. The ebook is about $10 and the printed book about $20, not including shipping. And I don't believe at this point there's an audiobook. We'll have to do something about that.
Okay, so now we have lots of time left for question and answer session. So at this point, I'm going to invite Pat and River to come on camera. Pat and River are also members of the collective and the coordinating committee. And what we've done here is brought them in as well, in case some of the questions are require their knowledge to answer them. And what we were doing with each of the questions is having more than one person answer, because there might be more than one side of the history or queer case, or more than one opinion. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the questions that I already have, and then Rima is going to send me some other ones. So the very first question that we have, this is open for everybody to answer, but simply, it's in the book, you talk about the collective, but can you just, if people are interested in maybe doing a project like this themselves, just speak some more as to how the collective actually operates, and raise your hand if you wish to speak. That's the level of the technology we're using at this point. Pat, thank you.
Yeah, well, the collective, I mean, we've always been called the collective, but you know, for the first 10 or 12 years, Claire Robson was our artist in residence, and worked with us, and we did many different things through her. But then we realized we had to have somebody to just keep the meetings going, so we formed a collective which was open to anybody. And so there's 5 of us, or 6 of us that are on the collective now, or on the, I should say, the coordinating committee. But in my opinion, we all are equal voices. There's no, we work by consensus. Everything that might be brought up in a coordinators meeting is also brought to the whole group, quirky group, to make a decision before we go ahead with something. So we try to work as equal as possible, and we want everyone's voice heard.
Dawn.
Yeah, I would just add to what Pat said, that there's about 23 members of Quirky currently. So our meetings can get pretty large sometimes. On Zoom, we usually have 15 or 16 people every week. It's not always the same people. And the coordinating committee kind of functions as the artistic directors. We try to do the administrative work of the group, and we facilitate meetings to come up with ideas for what we're going to do during the year, and then we find speakers and guest artists to do workshops and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the role of the coordinating committee, and we do grant writing and things like that.
Cynthia, then Val.
In terms of the writing process, we often create writing prompts on various different topics to give ourselves ideas about things that we could make images or write about. And sometimes those turn into a collective piece, such as the play we wrote, Sorry, which was written collectively. Oftentimes those turn into individual pieces that we write, in which we take quite different approaches to that theme. Then we share our work in draft form with each other, and we receive feedback. And we find that that's just enormously helpful. Many times we feel very insecure about something that we're working on. And once we get the feedback, we get a lot of support to continue it through, and we get lots of ideas or how to improve it or make it more effective. And then we share it again at a forum. And then because we have the opportunity to share our work with others through our zines, through our books, and our readings, we're able to really come into our voices and have them be heard.
Thank you, Cynthia. Val.
We also divide into different small groups, because 22 people is a lot of people to sort of chat informally with. So we have a memoir group, Pan Memoir at the moment, I believe, and we have the graphic group, and we have the zine group, which started a couple of years ago. And that's it at the moment, I think, isn't it? That changes. No, I'm missing something.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dawn.
You forgot fiction. The graphic
Fiction, right.
part of the memoir group, yeah, right.
And so that, and how many groups we have and the formation of them depends on people's interests in a given year. And often enough, we also have an overarching theme for a year. So it might be this patch of ground grass on which I stand, sorry about that. And it might be Together We Stand, and it might be something completely different, depending on what's urgent and what we want to write about that year.
Okay, so the questions are now beginning to come in. So I'm just going to ask the first one. The question now is there an age requirement to join the Quirkies? Pat.
Well, we say 55 plus, and I think that's still what we're going by, but I don't know if anyone's has ever been asked about their age, but yeah.
River, did you want to contribute to this?
Well, don't forget Lottie.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We have a young person who's been a tremendous help and addition to our collective for, I don't know how many years now, at least 4, right? Something like that.
I think so.
So I'm so glad that he's part of it. Thank you.
I know from working with you over the years that there's been a number of younger people brought in as interns or to get experience for their studies or things like that. So you're not just providing a collective for yourselves, you're providing a service for people trying to get their qualifications in social work or in filmmaking, whatever. But thank you for that. The next question is related. Oh, sorry, Marcia and Cynthia.
Britannia is wanting to maybe set up a group with us of teenagers, a teenage group that we would do some workshops with or liaison with. And we had such a good time with your kids, the young people we worked with Youth for a Change. That was so wonderful. I'm hoping that we'll be able to do something with the Britannia high school kids.
But there is no upper age limit. So if you're 100 or even over, you could still join us. Currently, our oldest member is celebrating her 84th birthday this week.
Wonderful. River?
Just gonna say 85. We don't want to shortchange her a year.
So I'm going to ask, this is a question coming from Donna Dykeman detailing about the projects that they're working on. And one of which is Salt Chuck Indigenous Writers, basically saying that even though she's a colonizer, she's been invited to do this. So the question is, are you open to special projects with other groups?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we frequently do special projects with other groups. In fact, in the time I've been in Quirky, each year there's always been a special project with a different group. You know, we do like to take some time to plan these things and to make sure that everybody's on board and we know what we're trying to accomplish. And there, you know, there's some goals set out and roles and responsibilities and things like that. And possibly if we need money, we might look for grant opportunities, that kind of thing. But yes, we're very open.
Val wants to contribute.
We have a project proposal sort of system that, and it's fairly casual, but it allows us to look at it and see if we will work together well and so on. So that's available, I believe. Pat, you were.
Pat and Ellen.
Okay. Well, one of the projects that we did a while ago, which you know, Jen, because it was with Youth for a Change, and we worked with Dr. Gloria Gutman, who is a gerontologist at SFU, and this was on elder abuse, queer elder abuse, and it was quite amazing. We used video and we used posters, and we actually traveled around the province to all the health centers and showed the film to people working in the community and people who should know about this. And I think we opened up a lot of eyes, and I don't think for some people talking about LGBT things was something that was something they do a lot. So was received well, if not a little bit cautiously, but it was quite an amazing event, and we loved working with some of the youth too. And it was Kelsey and Claire who initiated it and got it going.
Yes, Pat, of course, I remember that. Just so that people know, that project was Canada's first ever educational materials on LGBTQ elder abuse. We didn't know at the time that we were going to create the first ever, so we had to kind of invent the wheel as we were going along. It involved 5 youth from Youth for a Change as well. And I recently presented on that project at a Queering Family Violence webinar hosted in Helsinki. And I've been invited to the National Institutes of Health in the USA to also talk about that project. So it's still got legs in 2021.
That's great.
Ellen, you wanted to make a comment?
Well, we have done a couple of zines, and we're struggling with a third one about racism from a queer perspective. And we've had quite a few submissions, and we're having to examine every single one and look at what it says and look at how, in fact, some of them might be racist, and how do we tackle white fragility, etc. So we have a collective that's working on it and examining the pieces and making recommendations for change, or possibly withdrawing them, or possibly saying, as mostly white queers, we can't do that. We have to keep looking at our own power and privilege. So this has been an amazing a project that all of us, including the entire Quirky group, going through some teachings from people who are much more knowledgeable with the lived experience than we are. So, but we hope it will be either a useful tool, or it will have been a useful tool for ourselves to examine racism.
Okay, I am seeing the same question come up over and over and over again. And so you might be getting deluged. Lots of people are asking, what is the process for joining Quirky?
Sorry, Jen, before we move to that, can I just mention that our most recent collaboration actually was with a group of Indigenous elders that are very active at Britannia Community Center. We had a social together with them in December, in which we shared our writings. We were so moved by the reading of a poem in this anthology by Myra Pierre that we organized a book exchange in which we got some of our books to her, and we got lots of copies of her book, and we're able to read them ourselves. And we're looking forward to having further exchanges with this Indigenous elders group out of Britannia again coming soon.
Wonderful.
I'd just like to add to that, because just recently this week we had what the City of Vancouver is calling a listening session because of all the major renewals that are going to be taking place at Britannia in the next little while. And so we were invited, along with C, which is a seniors group, and it's mainly Indigenous people in it, and another group to say what we felt about the land and how we'd like to see it used and so on. And there were a lot of Indigenous voices at that meeting too. So it was very well received.
So to join to become a member of Quirky, we're part of the Britannia Community Center, and applications for membership in the group need to go through Britannia. We can also, you can write to any of the coordinating committee members, and we can send you an application form. It takes a couple of weeks at least to kind of to get everybody who needs to see it and all of that, but it's pretty easy to join. So we just have to let Britannia know what we're doing.
Originally, we I don't know where we're at now because we don't meet in person, but originally we said 25 just because that was like a good number to work with, and anything larger, at least in the center, might be too large. I don't know where we're at with that now, though.
And for those of you who are perhaps coming in from not in the Greater Vancouver area, the Britannia being referred to is the Britannia Community Centre in Vancouver, which has supported the Quirkies with a meeting place for many, many years. And also, I think, with and project finances and things like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to invite Dawn to talk a little bit, however, about what would people need to do if they don't live in Vancouver and want to set up a group like Quirky.
Read the book.
It is, we have actually outlined the process in the book, but basically, I mean, you need to want to do this. You need to have a meeting place, and you need to have enough people interested to get it going. And we started with a host. I'm not entirely sure that's necessary though. But you can always check it if there's a university close to you and a department of gender studies of any kind, if there's someone there willing to do that. Cindy has got something to add to this.
Community, the queer center in Vancouver, also hosts an online group that is called Community Quills. And it's a group that's a little less focused on trying to publish or to work collectively, but it is a place that supports people who are doing some writing and want to share about that. And it can be reached through community seniors community.ca.
So I see Chris and then River.
I just want to add and to acknowledge that we actually began under the auspices of the City of Vancouver Parks and Rec. There was a project that was begun now 14 years ago, 15 years ago, where they were looking at the combination of arts and health. And so the Parks Board set up there were 4 groups of people who did different projects. We became Quirky and we became a writing group. There was one out of Strathcona with mostly Chinese people who did puppetry. And there was one in North Vancouver that did video. And there was one other one that was in sort of further east in East Van. So we had I think it's important for us to at least acknowledge that this is how we got started. And we were under the auspices of Parks and Rec for several years. And then we had to back out so that they could start new groups. And so that's when we became kind of more independent and ultimately became the collective that we are today. So I want to acknowledge and thank the folks who gave us that initial start. And I think nobody had any idea that 15 years later, we would still be gathering together and writing and publishing. So thank you.
River?
Yeah, and once we left the original umbrella, it came in handy to have people that knew how to write grants applications. And we have had some nice grant applications that have come to fruition, and that has helped to pay for some of our publication costs and things, as well as just the community help from Britannia and community organization. They've helped us financially as well. So it pays to have a good network and links in the community.
Cynthia?
And let us not forget Simon Fraser University, who assisted with the publication of The Bridge Generation.
And speaking of networks, I just want to say thank you, Marianne Joyce, who's from Portland, who I saw. She already went and bought the book already. She's listening. But yay, bold woman! This is all from Boldfest, and I know there's a few of you out there now.
Chris.
I also want to acknowledge that we have had some mentors along the way. Claire Robson was certainly one of our first, but one of our big mentors was Wei-Sun Choi, who as an out gay man and as a writer himself was very supportive of us and has written introductions to most of the books, most of the anthologies that we have put together. So we want to hold him present as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm just holding up your dedication to him in the preface of the book. I see Val.
I just want to add to that. If memory serves me, and Chris, correct me on this if I'm wrong, we started off with not very many people. It was 5 or 6 people at 411, and it's grown into this. And, you know, you can do it too.
Yeah, when we first started, Parks and Rec wanted groups of 25 people. And we were a group, at that point, there was about 12 older queers who had been gradually meeting at 411. Initially, we started out of the LGBT Generations Project from what was then known as the Center. And we began with a thing called Writing Our LGBT Lives. And we had 4 sessions with Claire Robson. So we started very small. And from there, we've grown. So I think that I think it's helpful to think about, you don't need to start with a huge group. They wanted us to have 25. We only had 12, and yet they accepted us. And we now, in fact, have a group of around 25. So don't think too big in the beginning. A group of people who can get together, who have a similar interest, and maybe you can have someone who could be a bit of a mentor and someone who has done some writing or published writing. We began specifically as memoir writing. And that's still pretty much the theme that we've been carrying through all these years. So you can think about starting small and then growing as we have done.
Thank you. Another question that's coming in more than once is, do the Quirkies go to other groups and organizations to do readings and performances? And if so, what should people do to invite you?
Contact us.
Yeah, we don't have a website. We have a Facebook group, but any of the I think the people on this Zoom program today have been putting up some of the links to how to get a hold of us. Any of the members of the coordinating committee, you can contact Britannia, but we do actually do quite a few readings. It's one of the things that I've really loved about Quirky is that we go out to different communities and to different organizations, and we even used to have an open mic night for a while. That was really great. But yeah, contact one of the coordinating committee members, and we'll let you know about our availability.
Thank you, Cynthia.
And then the Zoom environment, we'll just attend your Zoom meeting if you want. And I just kind of wanted to add that, you know, the video conferencing and Zoom environment has been very kind to us, because some of us have physical disabilities or mobility issues, and joining together, not going physically to the place, has been really useful. We have one member of our group who lives in long-term care and also who is nonverbal, but she can type and write. And this is a perfect kind of venue for her to participate with us. And she is writing some wonderful stories.
Right.
Also, I just want to remind people that the link has already gone up. Perhaps Ruma can stick it back up again. But in the meantime, they can watch your Zoom play, sorry. Val, I noticed you had your hand. Did you wish to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I'm hoping actually that once COVID-19 is over and we can physically meet again, we can keep a Zoom presence as well. So, which will allow people from further away to attend, and also people who have disabilities and can't physically attend. And the other thing I wanted to add is, when you're forming a group, having someone who can do some editing is a really good idea.
Rupert, did you wish to
Not
come in?
necessary, but good.
I just wanted to remind, every year we always did the showcase at the Roundhouse and for seniors, health, I guess it was health and arts. We're still putting that on. And that was a beautiful thing we always geared up for and had art displays. Because Quirky isn't just writing, it is imagery as well. That's what the I stands for. And I'm going to squeeze in here another couple of things. We have done we've done art projects, we've done photography stuff, we've done, I did a one person like performance art piece. We did a cabaret. We've done a variety of different things over the year. And each one of them stretched you beyond your comfort level, but you learned a lot from it. And it was a hell of a lot of fun. And, you know, to get back on stage again and do our readings and do all that stuff, I'm looking forward to it so much. I can't wait for that to happen again.
And I'm also very aware, because I've been working with you, that you're also performers, actors, directors. You know, Pat Hogan starred in one of our elder abuse videos alongside Claire Robson. We participated with you in Call and Response, and many, many years ago, we worked intergenerationally with, I think, Then and Now, Chris. That was also a performance piece, and that was in Richmond some years ago with Youth for a Change. So you're very, very eclectic. And I know that Claire Robson talks about art for social change and calls it artivism. And I just wonder if any of you would like to talk about the relationship between your art and your social activism. Don't all rush me. Val and Chris and Cindy.
Well, I'm just collecting my thoughts a bit, but you know, most of us have been activists. I came out in the late 70s, and a time when there were no queer civil rights at all, and when I was actually terrified of coming out. And it went well for me. I'm very fortunate about that, but it's part of who I am. So of course it's going to come out in my writing, it's going to come out in whatever I'm doing. So the two go together, being an activist, and since I'm also a writer and an artist, it comes out in that as well. And I imagine that's true for most people in the group.
Okay, so I've seen a number of hands, so it's now going to go Chris, Cynthia, Marcia, Ellen.
Yeah, I just want to say that part of the actual act of writing and then reading and putting the stuff out into the public is also part of the activism, because, and it's also important for us because just as we did the Bridge Generation, that we embody a lot of history in terms of how things have changed since, I'm going to say since the 1990s, when there was a huge surge in organizing and activism in terms of, in Canada, in terms of achieving LGBTQ rights. So for me, it's important as someone who's been part of that to also be able to carry that forward. We hope that we don't get to a point like the south of the border where our rights begin to get taken back. But it really is important to actually base our future on our past so that we're actually continuing to move forward. So that for me is the actual act of what we're doing is activism and keeping the spirit of social change alive.
Yeah, was there a comment from Donna Dykeman in the chat that says, I think a lot of us have been activists to the core, but didn't necessarily make the history books. So it is important to write your own history. Cynthia.
So much to say on this topic, but you know, the narrative that has excluded us is one that we are constantly challenging. And you know, we have seen ourselves, as Chris and others have said, we have seen people change things through social movements. And we know that that comes about but through words and images that change people's hearts and minds. It doesn't come about through force and power and violence. It comes about by people changing their feeling about themselves and their feeling about others. And that's what we do in our stories and writing and sharing.
Marcia?
What I found is that I'm not really into proselytizing about, how great it is to be gay or anything, but every now and then you're somewhere where somebody wants a talent night or wants storytelling or wants something like that. And from Quirky, all of us now have stories. We have art projects. We have a store of creative stuff that we can present if the need arises. For example, I was at a wood carving camp for a couple of years before COVID, and the wood carvers like to have sort of an open mic in the evening. So I did some of the Quirky stuff and they loved it. And I mean, it was down in the States, mostly, not exactly progressive people, but since we do some very entertaining stuff at Quirky, they loved it. They loved it. And normally, I mean, I wouldn't even mention that I was gay down there, but talent night.
Ellen?
I think that, that's what my poem was about, is that I look at all the people, just the images of people, plus the people who I know aren't here. And we've all been activists for a long time. And I think we're in a new wave of activism because of the Black Lives Matter movement and the Indigenous Black persons of color, Asians who are rising up, who are queer and who are challenging the queer movement for the racism in it and the silence and the not tackling it. And also because so many people have lost their paid jobs and there's rise in violence against the queer community all over the world. If you go to Outright and see the situation of queers, whether they're in Iraq being slaughtered on the streets or in Uganda, led by the Evangelical Christian Church. I mean, things are really, really gotten so much worse for our brothers and sisters and trans people all over the world because of the shutdown of the economies and the lack of affordable housing and the lack of support systems. So there's actually caravans coming up through South America who are stopping and visit with some queer people that we've worked with at UN Habitat in Quito, because they have to leave. They can't stay where they are. So I think that there's a real need for us to be outraged and speak out and fight back in whatever ways we can. And it won't all be nice, because what's happening is so cruel and so complex and so global. So I think Quirky has some vehicles that we can share, but we need to talk to, and maybe we help you, because a number of us are writing our memoirs to try to share some of the movements that we've been part of. But if we can help you write, or if we can help, interview and write your stories down, let us know, because it's a time to speak out and share organizing strategies.
Absolutely, thank you for that. We have about another 20 minutes or so people keep sending me the questions. In the meantime, I am just going to remind everyone that this event is part of the GSWS 50th anniversary celebrations, part of GSWS Reads. We also have some of our former Ruth Wynne Woodward visiting professors coming in. We have Afua Cooper having an event as part of the President's Colloquium on February 25th. Then Susan Stryker on March the 11th. And then, of course, on March the 26th, as part of our parallel GSWS Acts, I will be interviewing Cynthia Cole of the Beginnings of Women's Studies and Women's Organising at SFU and beyond. So please mark your notebooks with those ones. I'm looking here. Would you be interested or willing to do a special launch or presentation of Together We Stand as one of the PBA weekly sessions. PBA is also interested in highlighting different Zoom communication modes, such as art shows or plays that gently help people develop social activism skills and comfort. Charlotte, would you like to explain what PBA is so that we... Oh, and Pat's already answered. Pat's already answered that. Send your information to Pat.
PBA is Powered by Age, that was initially organized out of the 411 Senior Center with an invitation to people from lots of different senior centers to come together to learn how to podcast and to be engaged in podcasting. So Pat and I from Quirky and Dawn have participated there. And I see that as a way of a platform for also beyond our own LGBTQ community to actually be able to be part of the larger community. So that's another forum and another platform, Powered by Age. And Charlotte Farrell, who's here, is the person who is the facilitator and the organizer for that at the 411 Senior Center.
Thank you for that, Chris, because I'm very conscious that not everybody in our audience is local to Vancouver, and we have a number of American residents, etc. So thank you. On that, related to age, and what Chris was saying earlier about how the group had its beginnings in relation to Parks and Recs and a healthy aging activity and arts and health relation, I wonder if any of you would like to speak about how you feel participating in a group such as Quirky affects your health positively.
Well, there's a lot of research on this, and it's quite positive. There's a lot of social connection. You get to do creative things. And those kinds of activities and that kind of social connection are really important to people as they age. It's very easy to become isolated and very lonely and to lose your place in the community. So it really does have a very important health effect to be involved in a group like this.
Pat, and then River.
Yeah, just speaking for myself, I know that, having been in Quirky so long and seen changes all the time, it's so much a part of my life. The meeting in person and now on Zoom, I can't, it's a community. And I mean, there's some people that I get to see more than just on Zoom. We might meet for coffee or go for a walk, carefully, of course, distanced. But it's, for me, it's really it's good for my health and for my emotions. And if I have something that's on my mind, there's somebody to talk over things with. I also wanted to say that the Arts and Health event that is held once a year at the Roundhouse, except this year. What is great about it is there's all these different groups that we've gotten to know over the years. They're friends of us now, like there's a group from Strathcona, and none of it was all women, and none of them spoke English except one woman who was the spokesperson. They became our buddies, and we really got to know them well. And Claire went down there and became a good contact and friend. And then there's an Indigenous group that has beautiful hats that they display down there at the event, and many more. And some I don't want to even try to think of all the different groups, but there's a lot of different groups of people of color, and we all seem to we recognize each other when we get together each year. So that to me is a good thing, and it's good for our emotional and community health.
Val, is it you next? Val, you need to unmute.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to add, there's all kinds of emotional and so on benefits, but there's also an intellectual benefit. It keeps your mind sharp. You're working on things, you're writing, you're talking to each other, you're discussing, you're arguing, etc. So there's that factor as well. And personally, I'd like to keep my mind till I die.
Very good point, Val. River?
Yes, and I just want to remember the people that have been in Quirky that have passed on. We have lost quite a few, well, few anyway, and we can't help but have strong bonds. And we also have some people that have become our Quirky Emeritus group, and we award them a bit of a certificate when they can no longer come to our meetings anymore. And I kind of adopted one of our older Quirky members, and I visit her once a week. And I'm going to share this with her. She was really anxious. She doesn't have Zoom or computer or anything else, no technology. So I'll have to do this, go over there with my iPad and show this to her. But she's featured in the PowerPoint, and she'll get such a kick out of this. It's really important. It's that she knows that she's always going to be a part of this, and and that we do form bonds. And I mean, she's my family now. Let's face it. So I'm so grateful to Quirky.
That's so very important. And this session is being recorded, and the recording will be available very soon on the GSWS website. So for those of you who have friends who've missed it, that's where they can go view it, or you can go view it all over again. So
thanks, Jen, for all you do continually to activate what academia has become into what it really should be. You're doing great work.
That's the purpose of women's studies, was always to be a different way of being in the academy.
Yeah, and thank you, Rita and Aman.
Yeah. So I don't have any other questions right now from the audience. So I'm going to use my speaker's privilege and to ask you if you would like to make any comments on how the Quirkies, now some of this has already been answered, community, etc. But how do you feel you relate to the broader queer community in general?
Well, I'm part of it.
You love us.
We do.
I think we all have various tendrils out into it in lots of different ways. I'm on part of Dignity. I mean, we work with community. Everybody could name. Chris is one of the leaders of Rainbow Refugees. I mean, we're all continue to be activists. I work with Outright internationally. So I think all of us are doing different things continually with other queer groups and challenging the racism within the queer movement now, hopefully with this zine is just a step in that direction.
We also have connections with queer writers who are published writers, and we got several of them to endorse our book. So I think, there's that connection as well.
Yes, most definitely endorsing the book by Danny Ramadan and Bill Richardson, and yeah, good connections.
Shani Mutu.
Yeah, Shani Mutu was one of 5 finalists for the Giller Prize, and I watched my recording of that, in which she had, 1/5 of the time on the CBC the other night, and I thought, wow, my friend on the CBC, because of her writing. And honestly, she is part of our community. We helped her begin to write and publish, and now she helps us by supporting and endorsing our work, showing us that queers of color can make an enormous impact on changing what people see about our lived experiences and their lived experiences building community, I think is part of my entire answer to social injustice. And that is what I have spent my life doing. Quirky is one of my strong bases in which it is a community that I can count on, that has taught me how to build community in other ways and with other people. And I am deeply grateful.
A question has come in. Oh, Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that although where I have spent and will and continue to spend a lot of time within the lesbian community, being part of Quirky has given me the opportunity and the chance to be with other queer groups, with youth, and with trans and people that I was not that involved with, a few years ago. So, and it's helped to build community and give me a better understanding of a lot of things queer. So I'm grateful for that.
Farron.
Yes. For me, being part of Quirky led to me being part of the Britannia Community Center board. So I feel that being on that board, I'm a representative of the gay community per se. So we work very strongly. It's an incredible center. And we work very strongly with anti-racism and oppression. We work with seniors and food security and all of those things. And to me, it's just modeling being a gay man and being part of the everyday community. So that's been my part.
Yeah.
So a question was put in the, more of a request. Donna has come up with a wonderful idea of saying, would the Quirkies care to read out the endorsements? There's 4 endorsements on your book, 2 on the back cover, 2 in the inside. And if anybody would like to, I can read my own if you wish.
Go for it.
Okay, whilst you're working out which one each of you might want to read, this is what I wrote. Both in my position as a professor of gender, sexuality, women's studies, but also the co-founder of the queer youth activist group, Youth for a Change. Together We Stand, Queer Elders Speak Out is a unique and amazing book by members of Quirky that provides details of how the group organizes and works with original writing in prose, poetry, graphic novel, and playwriting. I laughed, I cried more than once, and I'm in awe of the histories of LGBTQ2S+, activism recorded here for posterity. This is a book about art and activism. It is both art and activism. Treasure these words from our queer elders. So thank you for writing this. Are you going to read one of the others?
I'll read Danny's.
Okay, Dawn, go ahead.
A magical thing happens every time marginalized voices come together to create words. Quirky is such a gathering. It brings the voices of elder LGBTQ+ folks to the forefront and allows them to be heard loud and clear. There is wisdom and love and knowledge to be shared in the work of that Quirky folks do. Danny is the author of The Clothesline Swing and Salma the Syrian Chef, and has been getting a lot of awards for The Clothesline Swing. And I think he's doing a artist in residence stint right now. So that was a very wonderful thing from him.
Bill Richardson, writer and broadcaster, vibrant, intelligent, joyful, defiant, tender, funny, surprising, and diverse. There's so much to enjoy in the harmonic clamor of these elders' voices, in these stories of queer lives richly lived and still evolving. I was moved and inspired to read them.
Would anybody like to read Dr. Gloria Gutman? Thank you, Marcia.
This is Dr. Gloria Gutman, who is from the Department of Gerontology and Gerontology Research Center at Simon Fraser University, Vancouver campus. The memoirs are so compelling. I started out with the intention of skimming and ended up reading every one. Those in the first section will resonate with anyone who remembers being singled out by a teacher or bullied by classmates because he was different.
Thank you. So we are coming to the end of our event. I would just like to say if there's anybody in the audience who has a final question, now would be the time to send it in. Similarly, if there's any of their quirkies would like to add any further comments, just raise your hand. Yes, Ellen.
Well, Rima's been doing a great job in the chat, providing links. There's so many incredibly powerful works coming out. Aloma, Melinda Lowe, Shani. I mean, there's just, the voices are just so strong these days, and there's more and more voices. So I think I hope more groups can help new young writers get exposure and voice to really look at the really diverse voices that are coming up and fighting back and really saying, forget the old normal. We want a new world that includes us.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, I'm just, Cynthia?
Although we didn't read any of our works today from trans individuals, I think we want everyone to know that we are a trans inclusive group and that we profoundly appreciate the voices of people who are gender divergent within our group and within our community.
Thank you. Our questions come in. The question is, what's next for Quirky?
Well, we're talking about a number of things. One of them's a podcast. There are going to be more zines, and most likely there'll be another book.
What about a play?
I'd love to be part of that. Preferably on the stage rather than Zoom.
Yeah.
Baron?
Our fiction group has talked about the possibility of putting together audiobooks. So we probably will be looking into that.
Or even a series of podcasts where each chapter becomes one broad podcast.
We're also looking to have workshops for ourselves on various topics. One of them being on presenting and doing oral history or oral stories, as well as how to present well. With learning to voice inflections and pauses and that kind of things. That's one of many suggestions that have come out of our workshop.
And just so you know, there is in the oral history section of SFU, I think there's a podcast studio.
Wow.
So it might be something that you could offer up to one of the history profs to say, do you have students who want to work on this project with us?
Great idea.
Sounds good.
I might take you up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, come to me first. I'll see what I can find out.
All right.
We're now at this time on the our schedule that says thank yous and goodbyes. So I would just like to make a few thank yous before we all disappear. And if possible, if the Quirkies would like to stay on after 6 o'clock, just so we can say goodbye to each other, then we'll do that. So as Ellen has already noticed, Rima Faris has been doing a sterling job moderating the chat and providing links. Rima is a PhD candidate in the Department of Gender, Sexuality and Women's Studies, a former school board trustee and many, many other things. We also want to thank our departmental manager, Roberta Nielsen, for providing some of the funding and the management of this. We are very beholden to SFU meetings and events because they allowed us to have the Zoom version that would allow us to do it as a webinar rather than just a Zoom meeting. Obviously, we are beholden to our communications officer, Aman Chandy, who has really been the powerhouse behind basically our 50th anniversary events. And working with Aman has been Fevan, who is a SFU co-op student working with Ammon on the communications. So thank you, Fevin, too. And of course, a huge thank you to all of the Quirkies, both those of us, those who are not with us, but a special thank you for those of us who are here right now and have been so willing and generous with your talents and your time and your thoughts. It's always, always a pleasure. Now I'm going to say, is there anything that the Quirkies would like to say in closing down?
Thank you so much, Jen. We really appreciate you giving us this opportunity. It's really great. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dawn.
yeah.
I saw Val and Cynthia.
Same thing. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody who has joined us. Although we cannot see you, we feel you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not
Thank
quite
you,
sure.
Jen. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure of what our peak number was, but I think it was over 50 participants. But I'm sure Ammon or Rima can correct me if I am wrong. I'm inviting people to look at the chat to see and to move up and down, because it's not just Rima that's been adding new events. Other audience members have been linking to like-minded events, so you might wish to look at those. And Ammon has just added a link to our further events. And as I say, the next one is Afua Cooper, then Susan Stryker, and then Cindy is back with us. So lots more coming up, and we will be keeping going throughout 2021. And maybe towards the end of 2021, we might be able to do something in person.
It'd be great if we could do something in person once again with Youth for a Change.
Yeah, well, Youth for Change has been meeting virtually. We had a September and October socially distanced in parks type of meeting.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to keep them going once a month virtually. As you saw, the very first prize winner here is was Nix, who's a Youth for Change member and very, very activist. That Nix is about to do a presentation with me to the YMCA again later this month. So we're still alive, and we would love to work with Quirkies.
Good. Yay.
So we have 4 minutes until this ends. So your final chance to say anything, or I will invite Ammon to close us down, but keep the panelists with us. I think people are just waving. So the last group of people I have to say thank you so much to are our audience.
Yes.
Quite the turnout. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating and for your comments and your questions and all the links that you are adding to this conversation. I notice a few people have, the numbers are kind of dropping down. So last chance, we're in the last 3 minutes. Ellen?
I just want to invite everybody to join us for the queer Muslim activists from MENA who are going to be presenting a webinar with Women Transforming Cities on March the 6th. And you can look at the Women Transforming Cities Facebook page or any of our social media sites for the details. And trans Egyptian person coming in from New York, lots of really powerful voices will be part of that.
Thank you. Anybody else want to make an announcement? Cindy?
Yes, a number of us were those among those who were interviewed and part of An Army of Lovers exhibition done by Elle Chenier through the SFU History Department, and that is all available online as well. And yeah, it's special to our hearts. Lots of our stories. There are oral history interviews. There is visual stuff to see and read. A number of us participated in that great event.
That was originally supposed to be launched in person and in an art gallery. COVID closed that down. I'm hoping Rima can find the link to the virtual version of that. Thank you. Also, a number of you participated in my project Beyond 1969, an intergenerational oral history with regard to Bill C-150. Of course, we were touring. We managed to spend the summer touring Surrey, but then it was supposed to tour back, and it got to New Westminster in person, and it was supposed to go to Roundhouse and various other places in Burnaby and Vancouver. And yeah, it didn't. So I've asked a number of you for permission to use your material. Thank you for those who have responded. It will go online when I've got the final permission. So people watch out for that project Beyond 1969 and An Army of Lovers, 2 history projects in partnership with many Quirkies and SFU. See, yet another link.
Thanks to all the readers for being brave and reading your stuff today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So we're now in the final seconds. So I'm going to invite everybody to do what is now the standard Zoom thing of waving goodbye.
Wave.